I stood in the shadows of Rosewood Manor, the grand white columns a stark contrast to the darkness coiling in my gut. Elise, my cousin, was a vision in white, twirling in what was supposed to be my wedding venue, in her wedding gown. It was happening again. The same stolen dreams, the same sickeningly sweet smile on her face. My stomach clenched, a visceral memory of the car crash, the screech of tires, the blinding pain after I discovered her first betrayal. Back then, I'd been naive, heartbroken. Now? Now I was reborn, armed with the crushing weight of foreknowledge. "Isn't it perfect?" Elise gushed to her giggling bridesmaids. They fluttered around her like moths to a flame, oblivious. She had no idea. No idea that the mousy cousin she'd so easily crushed before was gone. In her place stood a woman who had clawed her way back from death, who had spent 5 years meticulously planning this moment. The heavy paper of the property deed for Rosewood Manor felt like a brand in my purse. I'd bought it 3 months ago, a silent, invisible move through a shell company. Her wedding was set for Saturday. The demolition crew was scheduled for Friday. Let her parade. Let her preen. Her perfect day was about to become my perfect revenge. 5 years. It felt like a lifetime ago and also just yesterday. I jolted awake, gasping in my old cramped apartment. The stale smell of forgotten takeout containers, a smell I thought I'd left behind with my past life, assaulted my senses. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I was 22 again, but my mind held the memories, the pain, the betrayals of a life lived to its bitter end. It was disorienting, terrifying. Had I gone mad? Was this some cruel afterlife? The next day, I met Elise for coffee. Her smile was the same. Sweet, innocent, a perfect mask for the viper coiled beneath. She chatted about her classes, her dreams, all the while her eyes, those deceptively bright eyes, were already sizing me up, plotting. In my previous life, I'd been blind to it. This time, I saw every flicker of calculation, every carefully crafted word. And in that moment, a silent vow took root in my soul. I would not be a victim again. I would change everything. My foreknowledge of market shifts, of booms and busts, of opportunities ripe for the picking, that would be my weapon. I would build an empire, brick by painstaking brick, and then I would watch hers crumble. Just as the bitter coffee cooled on the table, my phone buzzed. A text. Blake. My former fiancé, the man who had chosen Elise, chosen her lies, after she'd stolen my venue, my life, the first time around. His name on my screen was a ghost, a relic of a past I was determined to rewrite. The memories of my past life were a roadmap to a future I was now actively shaping. Cryptocurrency. I knew which coins would skyrocket, which would crash and burn. I invested, watched the numbers climb, the stock market. I anticipated the shifts, the surges, the downturns, moving with a precision that would have seemed like sorcery to an outsider. Real estate. I knew which forgotten neighborhoods were on the cusp of gentrification, which properties would yield fortunes. Phoenix Holdings. My shell company, my shield, my silent hand in the market. It rose from the ashes of my past life, a testament to my resilience. The struggle of my previous life, the constant worry about bills, the gnawing anxiety of never having enough, it all faded as my bank account swelled. Thousands turned into millions. Financial freedom wasn't just a number, it was a weight lifted, a breath finally taken after drowning. It was power. Then came the chance encounter with Blake. I'd orchestrated it, of course. A carefully chosen coffee shop, a strategically timed arrival. His cologne, once intoxicating, now just a scent. His eyes, still captivating, held no power over me. I felt nothing, a cold, satisfying neutrality. He was a pawn in a game he didn't even know he was playing. All the while, I meticulously documented Elise's every move, her sweet manipulations, her subtle digs, her calculated charm. I played the part of the oblivious, loving cousin, all while sharpening my knives. It began just as I knew it would. Elise weaving her web around Blake. I saw them at my favorite cafe, the one I'd naively introduced them to in my past life. Her hand lingered on his arm a fraction too long, her laughter a little too bright, a little too practiced. A flash of red-hot anger, familiar and sharp, pierced through my carefully constructed composure. I let it burn, let it fuel me. "Blake, darling," I'd said, my voice light, casual, during a dinner he thought was his idea. "I was thinking, Rosewood Manor, for the wedding. Wouldn't it be breathtaking?" His eyes lit up. He'd always loved the place. In my past life, it was my dream venue, the one Elise had so cruelly snatched. This time, it would be the stage for her downfall. The meetings with the manor's owner were clandestine, swift. I offered triple the market value, a sum that made his eyes widen in disbelief. The only condition? Absolute secrecy. No one was to know about the sale until I, the anonymous buyer behind Phoenix Holdings, decided to reveal it. Then came my family dinner. A week earlier than in my previous life. A small, deliberate shift in the timeline. Blake, beaming, raised his champagne flute. The crystal glasses clinked, a deafening sound in the sudden silence. "To us," he announced, his eyes finding mine. "We're getting married." The first piece had moved. The game was afoot. The engagement dinner was a tableau of familiar faces, each one a ghost from my past life, a player in my carefully orchestrated present. Elise, my cousin, my maid of honor, her smile a little too wide, a little too triumphant. Rachel, my best friend, her eyes darting between Elise and me, already, I knew, scheming. My mother, her perfume, a suffocating cloud of lilies and disappointment, hugging Elise with a warmth she rarely showed me. Blake, my fiancé, handsome, charming, and utterly clueless. And then there was Cameron, Elise's brother, the only one who, in that other life, had tried to warn me. My mother's hand lingered on Elise's arm. "You look radiant, darling," she cooed, and the subtle barb, the unspoken comparison hung in the air. I smiled, a serene, knowing smile. I saw them all, not as they appeared, but as they truly were. Rachel's enthusiastic suggestions for wedding planners, florists, caterers, I recognized them now. Each one, a subtle act of sabotage, a tiny pinprick designed to unravel my happiness. Later, I found myself on the balcony, the cool night air a welcome relief. Cameron leaned against the railing, a whiskey tumbler in his hand. He was watching me, his gaze unsettlingly perceptive. "You seem different," he said, his voice low. It wasn't an accusation, more an observation. As if he sensed the tectonic shift within me, the 5 years of pain and planning that had reshaped my soul, I just smiled. Happier, I hope. He didn't look convinced. The cloying sweetness of Elise's perfume was the first thing I noticed as I approached the powder room. Then, their voices, hushed, conspiratorial. Rachel and Elise. My hand tightened on the cool porcelain of the sink, my knuckles white. I forced myself to breathe evenly, slowly. "Don't react, not yet." "It's perfect," Elise was saying, her voice dripping with false concern. "We just need to convince Blake that Rosewood is bad luck. All those stories about failed marriages, structural issues, he'll be putty in our hands." Rachel giggled. "And then Lakeside Gardens. I've already spoken to the manager. It'll coincidentally become available just when they need it. He'll think you're a miracle worker, finding such a beautiful venue on short notice." Lakeside Gardens, the backup. The same backup they'd used in my previous life. My blood ran cold, then hot with a familiar simmering rage. I took a deep breath, smoothed my expression, and pushed the door open. "Oh, there you are," I chirped, my voice bright, carefree. "Elise, that dress is stunning. You have such amazing taste." Her smile was a masterpiece of duplicity. She had no idea I was already 2 steps ahead. As I walked away, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I know what they're planning. "Meet me tomorrow if you want proof. Lunch with Mother." The familiar clink of china, the scent of Earl Grey, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy between us. "Darling," she began, her voice a carefully modulated symphony of concern. "Rosewood Manor, it's terribly expensive, isn't it? And so grand. Perhaps something a little more appropriate? Lakeside Gardens, for instance. I hear it's lovely." The tea tasted bitter on my tongue. Appropriate. The word was a thinly veiled criticism, a familiar jab. My own mother, once again, an unwitting, or perhaps not so unwitting, accomplice in Elise's schemes. Her expression, that practiced mask of maternal worry, was a carbon copy of the one she'd worn in my past life, right before everything had imploded. "You might be right, Mother," I said, feigning reluctance. "It's just, Blake had his heart set on Rosewood." I watched the relief wash over her face, a flicker of triumph in her eyes. "But I'll certainly consider other options." The moment I left the restaurant, I pulled out my phone. The owner of Lakeside Gardens answered on the third ring. My offer was astronomical, enough to make his voice tremble. The condition? Lakeside Gardens was to remain unavailable for any and all wedding bookings on my chosen date, and for a year after. He readily agreed. Check. The signs were subtle at first, a lingering glance towards Elise at a family gathering, an inside joke I wasn't privy to. His texts, once instantaneous, now delayed. The familiar ache, the one I thought I'd buried deep, pricked at my heart. But this time, it wasn't heartbreak. It was cold, hard determination. History was repeating itself, and I was ready. I arranged a business dinner, important connections, men and women Blake had been trying to network with for years. I made the introductions, facilitated the conversations, watched as his ambition, his Achilles heel, flared to life. Elise, for all her charm, couldn't offer him this. "My influence can open a lot of doors for you, Blake," I murmured later as we stood on the balcony of the restaurant, the city lights twinkling below. It wasn't a desperate plea, not anymore. It was a chess move, a reminder of what he stood to lose. He kissed me goodnight. His lips were hesitant, the passion muted. I could almost smell the conflict on him, a confusing cocktail of loyalty, ambition, and Elise's cheap perfume. He was wavering, just as I knew he would. The coffee shop was quiet, the air thick with the scent of roasted beans and unspoken secrets. Steam from my latte created a fragile barrier between Cameron and me, the anonymous texter. I should have known. "I tried to warn you last time too," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't listen." My blood ran cold. "Last time? What do you mean, last time?" He looked at me then, a deep, searching gaze that seemed to penetrate the carefully constructed walls I'd built around myself. "You remember, don't you? The other life." Shock rippled through me. I wasn't alone, he remembered. "It's not just you," he continued, his voice low urgent. "I've been through it. Loops. Different versions. I don't know why or how, but I recognize the signs in you. You're different this time. Stronger." He leaned closer, his eyes dark with a warning I couldn't ignore. "Be careful," he whispered, the words chilling me to the bone. "Changing too much, too quickly, it can have consequences. Consequences you can't predict." The rumors started subtly, like a poisonous vine winding its way through our social circle. Rosewood Manor was structurally unsound. Bad wiring, plumbing issues, a string of recent wedding cancellations. Elise and Rachel, the ever-so-helpful bridesmaids, fanned the flames with practiced concern. The call from the Rosewood manager came as expected. Panic laced his voice. "Cancellations. People are worried. I don't understand." I listened, my expression a mask of sympathetic distress, while a cold, burning rage simmered beneath the surface. Blake, bless his predictable heart, fell for it hook, line, and sinker. "Maybe we should consider alternatives, darling," he suggested, his brow furrowed with worry. "Just in case." The exact same words he'd used in my past life. "Perhaps you're right," I conceded, appearing defeated. "Elise mentioned Lakeside Gardens. Maybe we should take a look." The event manager at Lakeside Gardens was all smiles when we arrived. Until I introduced myself. Not as Blake's fiancée, but as the new, anonymous owner of her establishment. Her face paled. My smile was serene, almost pitying. "I'm so sorry," I said, my voice dripping with false regret. "But Lakeside Gardens is fully booked. For the next year." I watched the hope drain from Elise's face. The first domino had fallen. The call from the seamstress was almost comical in its predictability. "A terrible mix-up," she stammered, her voice laced with a practiced apology I recognized instantly. Your custom wedding dress design? It was accidentally sent to Miss Elise instead of you. Exactly as it happened before. The same rehearsed speech, the same feigned incompetence. The sting of betrayal was less potent this time, dulled by foreknowledge, but it was there nonetheless. A few hours later, my dream dress, the one I'd sketched and agonized over for months, appeared on Elise's social media. My custom design, the caption gushed. Isn't it divine? I commented, my words dripping with saccharine sweetness. It looks better on you anyway, cousin. Truly stunning. Inside, I was already dialing Madame Evangeline, the renowned designer who had famously rejected Elise's request for a custom gown in our previous life. I had a feeling she'd be much more receptive to my offer this time, especially with the generous retainer I was proposing. My phone pinged. A message from Madame Evangeline. I've reconsidered your offer, and I have information about who really sabotaged your original dress. A slow, satisfied smile spread across my face. The wedding vendors, one by one, they began to politely, regretfully decline Elise's business. The florist? So sorry, we're fully committed that month. The photographer? Unfortunately, we have a prior engagement. The caterer? A staffing issue, terribly sorry. My substantial deposits, my carefully cultivated connections, my network of loyalties built over 5 years of meticulous planning, they were working their magic. I watched from across the street, hidden behind the tinted windows of my car, as Elise stormed out of the fifth bakery that had suddenly, inexplicably, become unavailable for her backup wedding date. Her face was a mask of frustration and disbelief. The champagne was crisp, cold, perfect. I sipped it slowly in my new penthouse apartment, the city lights twinkling below like a carpet of diamonds. The list of vendors now exclusively loyal to Phoenix Holdings, and by extension to me, grew longer by the day. I made sure Blake witnessed it all. Elise's increasingly desperate phone calls, her tearful outbursts, her ugly, unraveling frustration. He was starting to see the cracks in her perfect facade, and he didn't like what he saw, the engagement party. The air crackled with anticipation, with unspoken tensions. And then, Elise made her grand entrance, in a white dress, a dress so similar to mine it was almost a caricature, a blatant, desperate attempt to upstage me. Hushed whispers rippled through the room. Guests exchanged knowing glances. Blake looked confused and a little uncomfortable. For the first time, he seemed to be seeing Elise not as the charming, vivacious woman he thought he knew, but as someone else. Someone grasping, manipulative. I chose my moment carefully, raised my champagne flute. To all our wonderful friends and family, I began, my voice clear, steady. Thank you for celebrating with us. My eyes found Elise's. And a special thank you to my dedicated maid of honor, Elise. Her enthusiasm for wedding planning has been truly remarkable. I smiled, a sweet, innocent smile. All these little mishaps, the venue, the dress, they're just humorous anecdotes for the wedding album, right? The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Elise's face was a mask of polite fury. She was being exposed, not by a direct accusation, but by the subtle, undeniable truth. And she knew it. The bathroom was an oasis of sterile white, the fluorescent lights harsh, unforgiving. Elise cornered me by the sinks, her reflection in the mirror a pale, panicked imitation of her usual composure. This is all a misunderstanding, she stammered, her voice tight, desperate. The dress, the venue, it's just a series of unfortunate coincidences. Her carefully constructed plans were crumbling around her, and the realization was dawning in her eyes. The tremble in her voice was a symphony to my ears. I'm not sure what you mean, cousin, I said, my voice calm, almost bored. I thought the dress mix-up was just an accident. And Rosewood Manor? Well, these things happen, don't they? I turned to leave. Her hand shot out, grabbed my arm. Her eyes, those bright, deceptive eyes, were narrowed, dangerous. You've changed, she whispered, her voice a low hiss. I don't know how, but this isn't over. Oh, I knew it wasn't over. It was just beginning. Rachel, ever the loyal lapdog, began her campaign. Carefully crafted lies, whispered insinuations about my bridezilla behavior, my unreasonable demands. It was a repeat performance, a scene I'd watched unfold with devastating consequences in my past life. My friends, my bridesmaids began to distance themselves. Canceled brunches. Cold, short responses to my texts. The pain was a dull ache, a familiar wound reopened despite my preparation. Loneliness, even when expected, had a sharp edge. But this time, I didn't crumble. I passively accepted their excuses, their silences, all the while secretly gathering my evidence. Screenshots of Rachel's texts, recordings of her concerned phone calls. The same tactics, the same manipulative phrases she'd used on other unsuspecting brides, long before me. My countermove was swift, anonymous, a digital package delivered to each bridesmaid. Proof. Undeniable, irrefutable proof of Rachel's duplicity, her pattern of sabotage. The truth I've learned is a powerful weapon. Another family dinner, another serving of thinly veiled hostility. Mother, her voice laced with a martyr's sigh, announced she would be helping to finance Elise's wedding. "She's struggling so with the costs, poor darling," she said, her eyes flicking towards me, a silent accusation. My wedding apparently was unnecessarily extravagant. Elise, smug and triumphant, accepted Mother's offer of grandmother's wedding veil. The veil promised to me since I was a little girl. A family heirloom, a symbol of love and tradition, now a casualty in this bitter war. I clenched the cold silverware in my fist, my smile a brittle facade. The burn of rejection was familiar, almost comforting in its predictability. Just as dessert was served, a courier arrived, a certified letter addressed to my mother. Her hand trembled as she opened it. Her face, as she read the contents, turned a sickly shade of gray. It was a notification regarding certain changes to grandmother's estate. Changes I had quietly, meticulously arranged months ago. The game, dear mother, was far from over. Grandmother's former attorney was a kind, elderly man with shrewd eyes. He listened patiently as I laid out my case. Documents, financial statements, proof of my mother's mismanagement of family assets. Assets meant for me. And then, the final damning piece of evidence. Grandmother's journal, a small, leather-bound book I'd never discovered in my previous life. Its pages, filled with her elegant script, told a story of secrets, of financial entanglements, of my mother's long-standing favoritism towards Elise, rooted in debts and obligations I never knew existed. I confronted Mother privately. The taste of mint tea, her favorite, was bitter on my tongue as I laid the evidence on her polished mahogany dining table. Her carefully constructed composure shattered. The truth, stark and undeniable, was a cruel mirror. I offered her a lifeline. Reconciliation. Contingent on honesty, on a genuine effort to change. A test. A test I knew, with a heavy heart, she was destined to fail. Some betrayals, I was learning, ran too deep. The texts, I knew they were coming. Blake and Elise, their planned meeting at our special restaurant. The one where he'd first told me he loved me. The irony was almost suffocating, but this time, there was no heartbreak. Only a cold, calculating resolve. I arrived at the restaurant a few minutes before them. Cameron, my unexpected ally, was by my side. We were laughing, animated, engaged in a conversation that was, for once, genuinely enjoyable. Blake and Elise walked in. His eyes found mine. A flash of something... jealousy. Surprise? Crossed his face. Seeing me with Cameron, a man more successful, more self-assured, more loyal than he could ever hope to be. "Blake, Elise, what a surprise!" I exclaimed, my voice a perfect blend of warmth and polite detachment. Cameron's hand rested lightly on my arm, a silent, steadying presence. Their unexpected presence was anything but. It was all part of the plan, the bridal shower. My bridesmaids, armed with the truth about Rachel's manipulations, were back in my corner. Their rekindled friendship, their genuine warmth, made Rachel increasingly agitated, desperate. And then, the inevitable drunken scene. Rachel, her voice shrill, echoing in the suddenly silent venue, accusing me of manipulation, of turning everyone against her. Her words were slurred, her eyes wild. My response was calm, measured. I revealed the messages, the identical manipulative text she'd sent to each of my bridesmaids, the pattern exposed for all to see. A collective gasp went through the room. Mother, flustered, rushed to Rachel's defense. "She's just upset! You're being cruel!" she cried, inadvertently revealing her own complicity, her own knowledge of Rachel's schemes. Elise, ever the actress, seized her moment. Calculated tears streamed down her face. A dramatic, heartbroken exit, and Blake, predictably, foolishly, chased after her. Exactly as they had done before. Some things, it seemed, never changed. His late-night visit was an echo of a past I'd already lived. Blake, standing on my doorstep, rain-soaked and reeking of confusion and cheap cologne. He confessed his muddled feelings for Elise, his voice thick with a self-pity that grated on my nerves. The words were almost identical, a sad, predictable script. I listened, a strange sense of detachment washing over me. The scent of rain, once a romantic backdrop to our stolen moments, now just a damp, unpleasant smell. Calmly, I slipped his ring from my finger, placed it in his palm. No tears this time, no desperate pleas. His shock was palpable. He'd expected hysterics, begging, a scene. My composure, my quiet acceptance threw him off balance. "I've known for weeks, Blake," I said, my voice soft, almost gentle. "I've already started canceling the wedding arrangements." His face crumpled. He looked lost. "Good. Cameron." He appeared at my door an hour later, armed with takeout containers and a sympathy that, for once, didn't feel patronizing. We talked for hours, the city lights a distant, glittering backdrop to our shared, strange reality. The time loops. He'd experienced more than I had, each one a brutal lesson in breaking destructive patterns, in understanding the intricate, invisible threads that connected us. He confessed he'd been working behind the scenes, subtly nudging events, trying to help me without directly interfering, without altering the delicate balance of cause and effect too drastically. The comfort of his presence, of finally having someone who understood the weight of my foreknowledge, the depth of my pain, the burning fire of my ambition, was immeasurable. He hesitated then, his eyes searching mine. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice low. "Ready to reveal who you really are now? They have no idea what's coming." A slow smile spread across my face. Oh, they had no idea at all. The press conference was a carefully orchestrated masterpiece. I stood at the podium, calm, confident, the anonymous CEO of Phoenix Holdings finally stepping into the light. The business world reeled. The woman they dismissed as Blake's pretty, unassuming fiancée was a titan, a player, a force to be reckoned with. Phoenix Holdings, my creation, had quietly, ruthlessly acquired controlling interests in Blake's firm. My firm now, the revelation of my wealth, my influence, the empire I'd built while they were all underestimating me, sent shockwaves through the city. The timing was deliberate, calculated. 1 week before Elise and Blake's hastily planned wedding at Rosewood Manor. The business journals, the ones that had once fawned over Blake's supposed brilliance, now lauded my strategic genius, my vision, my audacity. The broken engagement was a mere footnote. The sweet taste of validation was intoxicating. The full truth of our connection, Cameron's and mine, unfolded in the quiet intimacy of my penthouse. Certain souls, he explained, souls whose lives were cut short by malice, by betrayal, were sometimes granted a second chance. A chance to right the wrongs, to rewrite their destinies. My car accident. It hadn't been an accident. The word hung in the air, heavy, suffocating. Elise. After I discovered her affair with Blake, her desperation, her ruthlessness, she'd tampered with my brakes. The evidence Cameron had gathered was irrefutable, chilling. The shock was a physical blow, stealing my breath, but then a cold, terrifying clarity settled over me. The true depths of her betrayal, of their betrayal, were far darker, far more twisted than I had ever imagined. This wasn't just about a stolen wedding venue, a broken heart. This was about a stolen life, my life. Mother called an emergency family meeting. My face, my name, My success dominated the local headlines. The air in our family home, a place once filled with my silent frustrations, now crackled with a stifling, uncomfortable tension. Relatives who had once barely acknowledged my existence now tripped over themselves to offer congratulations, to rewrite their past indifference. Elise was a mess. Her poorly concealed panic, her darting, fearful eyes told the whole story. The balance of power had shifted, irrevocably, seismically. She knew it. Mother, ever the opportunist, attempted a transparent, clumsy rewrite of history. "I always knew you had it in you, darling," she cooed, her hand reaching for mine. "I always supported your ambitions." I pulled my hand away. Her lies were a pathetic, desperate attempt to cling to relevance. I let the silence stretch, savoring their discomfort. Then, I made my announcement. "I've purchased Rosewood Manor," I said, my voice calm, level. "And I'll be making significant changes to the property." The looks on their faces, shock, disbelief, dawning horror, were a masterpiece. The news spread like wildfire. I owned Rosewood Manor. Elise and Blake's wedding day loomed, a ticking clock counting down to their public humiliation. The messages started pouring in. Elise, desperate, pleading. Blake, confused, contrite. Rachel offering tearful, insincere apologies. Mother, a barrage of guilt trips and manipulative pronouncements of maternal love. I deleted them all, a calm, satisfying swipe of my finger. Their frantic attempts at reconciliation were meaningless, transparent. The preparations for the renovations at Rosewood were well underway. The demolition permits, signed and approved after a series of generous, strategically placed donations to the local historical society, ironic, I know, rested on my desk. A tangible symbol of the impending destruction. Their dream, my revenge. Elise arrived at my penthouse unannounced, a storm of tears and disheveled desperation. The performance was familiar, predictable, denial, minimization, tearful, hollow apologies. Her voice cracked, her hands trembled. She was playing her last desperate card. I watched her, a silent, impassive observer. Every calculated gesture, every practiced expression, every carefully chosen word, I saw through it all. Her desperation grew with each unanswered plea, each moment of my unyielding silence. Finally, when her sobs had subsided into ragged gasps, I asked my question. One single cutting question that sliced through her performance like a scalpel. "Did you tamper with my brakes 5 years ago, Elise?" The color drained from her face. Her eyes, for the first time, held a flicker of genuine, unadulterated fear. Mother arrived next, armed with family heirlooms and a carefully rehearsed speech about making things right. Her perfume, once a comforting scent of childhood, now cloying, suffocating. She tried to embrace me. I stepped back. She launched into a rambling, self-pitying monologue, dredging up old family secrets, twisted justifications for her decades of favoritism, her casual cruelty. And then, the admission. Veiled, hesitant, but there nonetheless. She'd known. In my previous life, she'd known about the brake tampering, and she'd helped cover it up. To protect Elise. To protect herself. My heart, a muscle I thought had hardened beyond feeling, ached with a fresh, searing pain. I calmly refused her offerings, the tarnished silver, the yellowed lace. I returned them, along with a neatly bound portfolio. Documentation. Of every asset she had misappropriated, every trust she had betrayed. Her face, as she flipped through the pages, was a mask of disbelief, then dawning, horrified comprehension. Blake chose a neutral location, the coffee shop where we'd first met in both lifetimes. His charm offensive was a pathetic imitation of our early days, his words hollow, insincere. His engagement to Elise, he claimed, was a mistake. He'd been confused, manipulated. He still loved me. The coffee was bitter, matching the taste in my mouth. His attempts to secure a wedding venue, and by extension his financial future, were transparent, almost laughable. He talked, I listened. And then I laid out my own evidence. Meticulously documented instances of his professional shortcuts, his ethical violations, his casual disregard for rules and regulations. His face paled as he realized the extent of my knowledge, the precariousness of his position. "Your future at the firm, Blake," I said, my voice cool, businesslike, "will depend entirely on your future behavior, not on our personal history." His charm, his good looks, his carefully constructed facade of success, they were worthless now. He was, finally, at my mercy. The pre-demolition party at Rosewood Manor was a celebration. Not of destruction, but of new beginnings. I was surrounded by genuine friends, new allies, people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give them. Cameron was by my side, his presence a quiet, steady anchor. And then they arrived. Elise, Blake, Rachel, Mother. A quartet of desperation, their faces etched with a frantic, last-ditch hope. The workers in their hard hats and reflective vests were already preparing the building. The sound of their drills, their hammers, was a death knell for a past I was finally, definitively burying. They pleaded collectively, individually, promises of change, vows of loyalty, one more chance. Their hopeful expressions, their tear-filled eyes, revealed their enduring, pathetic belief that they could still manipulate me, still appeal to a sentimentality I no longer possessed. I let the silence stretch, let their hopes rise just a little. Then I spoke. One word. Calm, clear, final. No. It echoed through the grand, empty hall, a definitive full stop. And as the first support beam was ceremonially, symbolically removed, a tremor ran through the building. And through them. It was done. 1 year later. I stood on the grounds where Rosewood Manor once lorded over the landscape. The air was fresh, alive with the scent of newly planted gardens, of damp earth, and blossoming possibility. In its place, a community center was taking shape, its modern lines a clean break from the ostentatious grandeur of the past. Cameron was beside me, his hand warm in mine. Our alliance, forged in the fires of shared trauma and rebirth, had deepened, evolved into a partnership built on trust, respect, and a quiet, unassuming love. There was a profound satisfaction in watching the new structure rise, a testament to the power of transformation, of creating something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. I'd funded the center anonymously through Phoenix Holdings. The recognition, the accolades, they no longer mattered. Peace, I was discovering, was found not in applause, but in quiet generosity, in making a difference without needing the world to know. My mother. Our contact was limited, carefully defined by boundaries I'd learned to enforce. She was changing, slowly, attending therapy, making genuine, albeit clumsy, attempts at amends. The grand gestures were gone, replaced by small, consistent actions. A hesitant phone call, a quiet apology, a flicker of something that might one day resemble remorse. The rebuilding of trust, if it was to happen at all, would be a slow, tentative process. My own healing was a journey, not a destination. Learning to separate the wounds of the past from the possibilities of the present. Forgiveness. It was a word I was still learning to understand. Not a pardon, not an erasure of past wrongs, but a letting go, a lightness. Freely given, but conditioned on continued honesty, on a sustained commitment to change. Phoenix Holdings had expanded, its focus shifting from ruthless acquisition to humanitarian projects, sustainable development, ethical investments, empowering communities. The view from my office, overlooking the city I was now helping to reshape, was a constant reminder of how far I'd come. The recognition I received now was different. Not for my wealth, my cutthroat business acumen, but for the positive impact my company was making, the sustainable changes we were implementing. I found a new passion in mentoring other women, in helping them recognize the subtle signs of manipulation, the red flags I had once so tragically missed. Success, I realized, was not just about achieving my own goals, but about helping others achieve theirs without compromising my integrity, without losing myself in the process. A beach vacation, my new circle of friends. Their laughter was genuine, their support unwavering. The ocean breeze, salty and warm, seemed to carry away the final, lingering remnants of old pain, of hollow relationships built on deceit and self-interest. News reached me, through the grapevine, of Elise and Rachel's spectacular falling out. Their mutual manipulation tactics, their shared narcissism, had inevitably turned on each other. There was no satisfaction in their misfortune, no gloating. True healing, I understood now, meant their lives, their dramas, their petty squabbles no longer affected mine. They were a closed chapter, a forgotten story. The sunsets were breathtaking, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The conversations were deep, meaningful, with people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could provide. This, I realized, was what true friendship felt like. A quiet evening on my penthouse balcony. The city lights spread out below like a carpet of earthbound stars. Cameron leaned against the railing beside me, his presence a comforting warmth in the cool night air. "If you could go back," he asked, his voice thoughtful, "knowing everything you know now, would you change anything?" I considered his question, watching the distant, silent dance of the city. The pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak, they had been excruciating, but they had also been a crucible, forging me into the woman I was today. Stronger, wiser, more authentic. "No," I said, the answer surprising even myself. I wouldn't change a thing. Rebirth hadn't just been about revenge. It had been about a second chance, a chance to live a life true to myself, a life defined not by others' betrayals, but by my own choices, my own values. A sense of peace, profound and unshakable, settled over me. Whatever came next, whatever challenges the future held, I would face them as my true self. Unbroken, unafraid, free.